Hello and welcome to episode 3 of season 8 of the Ubuntu podcast. It's Tuesday it's Wednesday the 25th of March, and we're going to be discussing what's happening in the news. I'm Mark, and joining me this week are Alan.
Hello.
And, well, Laura's not here this week. She's off sunning herself somewhere. So instead, we have the one and only Martin Wimpress. Hello, Martin. But I can't hear him.
Hello.
Hello, there he is. I knew he was there somewhere. Excellent. So I believe that eagle-eared listeners will remember Martin from last season when we spoke to him about Ubuntu Mate. Is that right? Would we have you on?
It was just Mate desktop. Ubuntu Mate wasn't a thing back then.
Oh,
Good
okay.
Lord, really? Was it that far? Was it that long ago? Mind you, Ubuntu Mate has not been around that long, but it's accelerated pretty quickly. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later while we've got you on.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Well, in the meantime, shall we have some news?
Yes, let's do that. And in the news this week, sci-fi and fantasy author Sir Terry Pratchett has sadly died at the age of 66. Most famous for his Discworld novels, which also spawned a number of TV shows and video games, Pratchett had been suffering from Alzheimer's disease. And I feel really bad because I've only ever read one of his books. I feel like I should have read loads of them, but I never did.
I actually discovered Terry Pratchett and Discworld through the original point-and-click adventure video game on DOS. One of my friends had it, which is sort of an adaptation of several books into one game, which is, one of these sort of Monkey Island things where you go around collecting a load of stuff and then you try and solve puzzles by using every item with every other item until something happens.
He's been writing for that long. There were DOS games.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my introduction to Terry Pratchett as well, the same game.
Wow.
Yeah, there's also a Discworld multi-user dungeon or MUD game which is a text mode sort of like
Go North.
Yeah, it's sort of like a text adventure, but multi-user. But that's all. Yeah, that's been going for years. But yeah, he's been going for a very long time.
Yeah, I only the only book I've read of his, and I feel really bad for this, was The Science of Discworld, which apparently is a weird one. Last time I mentioned.
Yeah,
this.
that's like an offshoot of an offshoot.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite. I think I got it as a present or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel really bad. I've looked online and there are guides telling you, I guess there's going to be like a resurgence in people buying his books.
Yeah. It's an odd one because the disc, I mean, obviously he's Discworld are his most famous books. There's also other like series of books. He's got several other sort of trilogies and so on. But yeah, the Discworld books within the Discworld sort of mythos has several sort of storylines which are all intertwined. So you can, and they're not sequential. So book 3 doesn't follow book 2 necessarily. Like it might be that book 6 follows book 2 and book 11 follows book 6, and in between them there's other stories going on. So yeah, there's all sorts of ultimate reading order guides and so on.
Right. It's interesting.
Or you could just start at the start.
He's got a kind of tech following. And some of his technically minded fans have staged an ongoing memorial by adding a message GNU Terry Pratchett to the response headers of like various network servers. And there's a subreddit set up to document the project. So what's this GNU Terry Pratchett? Is he a big fan of Richard Stallman or something? I have no idea what this is.
I don't. I imagine that it was originally meant as a reference to the GNU project, but it's in one of his books. It's called Going Postal. They have a communication system called the Clacks, which is like a sort of semaphore tower arrangement, which is sort of like a telegraph system, but they have essentially network geeks running it, and they use they use header codes for service messages going back and forth, and one of the messages which is used is, well, so the GNU code means G is pass the message on, N is don't log it, and U is turn it around at the end of the line, so it goes back and forth. And the idea in the book is that one of the operators falls off a tower and dies, and so as a memorial to him, they insert this message into the headers, and it goes on forever. So the idea that of this is that this way that Terry Pratchett will always be remembered.
Neat.
Which I'm sure he will be anyway, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's quite nice to have that.
Yeah, it's nice. You can get like a Firefox extension, a Chrome extension. So if you go to a site which has this enabled, it lights up and tells you, which is quite a nice little thing to have.
Awesome. So, Martin, something else has been happening in the news recently. Something else is going away.
Yes, Google has announced that they'll be shutting down Google Code, their open source software hosting platform. The site is now closed to new projects. We'll be going read-only on the 14th of April and closing on the 25th of January 2016. And they're recommending that the exit strategy is to migrate Google Code projects to GitHub. Google themselves have said that they've moved a number of their open source projects to GitHub to meet developers where they are. Not Android, though, curiously. And there are tools available to help with that migration, and I can only hope that those tools have been improved since I migrated some of our projects at work from Google Code to GitHub a couple of years ago.
It's funny, Google Code always seems to be the place where projects just die. There just seems to be a big spider's web of dead projects on Google Code.
Google Code has sort of become the new SourceForge, hasn't it, really?
It has.
Yes. And in fact, they even have a tool for exporting Google Code to SourceForge.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did see, actually, today Vim has moved from Google Code to GitHub, I think.
I can't believe that Vim was on Google Code.
Well, there's only one person with commit rights to it.
Right.
Brad or Bram, the guy who runs Vim. So it's not like it's a massively collaborative. I mean, I'm sure there are lots of people who collaborate on Vim because it's a very popular, project. But that seemed a bit strange. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it didn't. As soon as I heard this, I thought, right, of course, because who uses Google Code, and it's a Google service, so of course they'll just randomly shut it down when they feel like it.
Of course.
Fortunately, it's not a Google service that's extremely valuable. I know it's going to be a pain for some open source projects to migrate, but Google Code, better off going to, I wouldn't just say GitHub, but give Bitbucket a look at as well.
Yeah.
I prefer Bitbucket these days myself.
Or your own instance of GitLab or something like that.
Yeah, as soon as you do private instances, though, you kind of cut off the flow of development contributions. So I'd say go to one of the, the big sort of social coding platforms such as GitHub or Bitbucket, and you'll continue to enjoy drive-by contributions.
So we've missed a trick on the end of year show last year of we should have a category for what will Google shut down next.
Oh,
prediction for the following year.
Yeah.
We'll do that at the end of
We'll
this
have
year.
to do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've got one of those.
So leave it for the last show of the year, and we'll get you on to do a.
Well, I may not be there for now, so my advice is if you're using Google Tasks, migrate away from that because I predict that's.
I was going to ask if it rhymed with poodle bus.
What? Okay. Moving on, Mark, we've got more news.
Next in the news, Cisco has announced that in order to circumvent government interception tactics, it will ship networking orders to dead drop addresses. Glenn Greenwald, the journalist who was responsible for publishing many of Edward Snowden's revelations, claims that the NSA intercepts shipments of networking equipment and installs backdoors before they reach the customer. So, yes, Cisco is saying, well, so they don't know which equipment to install their spying stuff on, they'll send it to an address which has nothing to do with you for you to go and collect it from.
Which is bizarre that this is the normal, mode of operation of a corporate entity in 2015.
Isn't that some kind of acknowledgement that it is probably happened at some point as well?
Right. And I mean, that photo that was in the story that Glenn Greenwald published last year or year before, whenever it was that it was revealed, showed a photo with blurred out faces of three people standing around a desk, with one of them with a Cisco cardboard box, or a box that was, had a Cisco brand on it, upside down, with him pulling the tape off the bottom, as if they were just opening the thing up in order to install their, their malware or whatever spying equipment inside the box. And it has that air of plausibility, that photo, and because their
Of course
brand
they could.
names on the side of it, they're obviously going to be very publicly saying to people we're having countermeasures to this. But that's just one box. Think of all the other boxes from all the other equipment manufacturers that are also, are they all doing the same thing? Are all the other network equipment manufacturers and server manufacturers shipping to dead drop locations? Who knows?
Yeah, ignorance was bliss, wasn't it?
But of course, they could have been opening it up to install their spying software, but they could have been opening it up to install their networking equipment.
They could be, yes. But but this is the thing, in the past, we'd think that these people who made these bold claims were crazies and conspiracy nuts, and now we're all kind of,
accepting of it,
eating our words and realizing, this stuff actually does happen, and it's very sad. Very, very sad.
What's next then, Alan?
Moving on, a blogger by the name of Carsten Monk has posted details about a possible violation in the GPL by BQ, manufacturers of the first Ubuntu phone. The source code for the Linux kernel used in the devices has copyright messages stating that it can't be distributed. Oh dear.
Whoops.
Yeah. So this happened last week. Carsten posted a lengthy blog post that was quite hard to read because it had giant copy pastes from the,
I couldn't work out what he was actually claiming when I first read it.
Well, if you look fairly closely, you can see there's chunks of source code in there. It's taken straight from a GitHub repo owned by BQ, and it had chunks of code in there. The source code said things like, this is company confidential, do not redistribute, not to be shared with the public, that kind of stuff, which, if you were a developer and you grabbed that repository, you'd start to question whether you had the rights to use it. Unlike the Linux kernel where it's all, GPLv2 and you can be confident that you can use that source code and redistribute it if you make any modifications. You can't be sure about that with this BQ repository. And
right.
That was raised.
So what's going on?
Well, he raised that in his blog post last Wednesday, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it turns out Thursday and Friday, BQ being a Spanish company, Thursday and Friday was a holiday in Spain. So the poor guys at BQ actually worked over their holiday to fix it. So over the last 7 days since that blog post went live, they've been fixing that repository. And David Planella from Canonical posted to the Ubuntu phone mailing list just today to say that they've tidied up the repository and they've fixed all the mistakes.
Cool. So this was just a mistake. This wasn't someone.
I think it was a
claiming to own code they didn't.
Just hadn't been done because all the other device repos had been done, but that one hadn't.
Okay.
So if you look through some of the others, you'll see a lot of the others have been cleaned up, but that one had just not been done. Right. I'm sure they felt terrible about it, and it makes them look really bad. But a lot of the comments online were, "Oh well, it's code from MediaTek, who are the SoC manufacturer. This is what do you expect?" Kind of, they were quite matter of fact about it. And it's what do you expect working with MediaTek, which was a bit unfortunate.
Right. What's next, Martin?
Well, this is awkward. Alexander Hanf, CEO of Think Privacy Incorporated, has posted a review of the privacy on Ubuntu for phones. Hanf expresses concerns over the data collected by the system by default, including keystrokes, location, and IP addresses, some of which are shared with third parties, he says. His advice is to avoid it at all costs until it has matured enough to provide even the most basic privacy and security tools.
Crikey.
And before I go on, I'm just going to turn my Ubuntu phone off right now. What's going on?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think it's unfortunate because Alexander is quite renowned in the privacy world as a bit of a Rottweiler, dog with a bone, and he goes after certain projects, rightly or wrongly, for what he feels are transgressions of what a user would expect a certain level of privacy to have with software or devices. And
so was it rightly or wrongly in this case? Is what he says correct?
It's tricky because I saw that Michael Hall replied. This was posted on LinkedIn, and I saw there was a reply from Michael Hall who, went through some of the things with him and said, well, that's not the case, and no, we don't do that. And Alexander kind of dismissed a lot of them out of hand and didn't really discuss them, properly in a way that I would expect. He kind of just dismissed the arguments. So when you first turn on an Ubuntu phone, mine arrived this week and I turned it on, you get a dialogue that says, do you want the GPS and location detection stuff to work? And you have to agree to a license agreement to do that because some of the code is licensed from Nokia. And actually, I'm pretty sure the build that Alexander had, that wizard crashed before he got to the dialogue that said, do you agree to this? So he never
So this
saw
was a
that.
bug.
Yeah, and it's a bug, and it's been fixed. But the bug didn't affect any shipping phones. He downloaded a development image and flashed it onto a Nexus 4, not a shipping phone. So,
right.
There's a number of issues I have with that article. But it's good that there are people like Carsten, like Alexander, analyzing things and calling us out, us being canonical, when, we make mistakes so that we can fix them, because if nobody does, then, what do we do?
So was this report put together based on using a device, but not actually inspecting the source code to see how it actually works?
I think he used the device and, looked at the behavior of the device and read the legal agreements and the documents that the license agreement that were linked from various places on the device. I don't know if he looked at any source code.
Okay, maybe that would have been a good place to start.
Yeah, maybe. Mark, what's the final?
The average user isn't going to start reading their source code to find out
no,
what their privacy is like.
And we trust other people to do that for us. People who work in companies like privacy aware companies. We expect them to do that. But then you should expect the code to be right already.
Yeah. So finally, this week, privacy-focused search provider DuckDuckGo has announced its annual donations to free and open source software projects based on nominations from the community. The donations total $125,000 across 5 projects, including the high anonymity Linux distribution Tails and the Girl Develop It open source mentoring program. And then there's a whole host of other sort of privacy related companies and tools that projects and tools that they've donated to.
That's a pretty amazing amount of money, really, isn't it? For what you might consider a niche search engine.
Yeah. I mean, sure, I use it every day, but it's really impressive that they've managed to not only make enough money to keep going, but also make enough money that they can then give some of that money back to the community.
Yeah, DuckDuckGo are doing an awful lot of things right. I did a couple little development projects for DuckDuckGo last year, and out of the blue, I got a bag of swag turn up with T-shirts and USB sticks and stickers and all manner of things. So my daughter thinks DuckDuckGo is the best thing ever because she's got DuckDuckGo stickers adorning her room all over the place.
Oh, wow.
DuckDuckGo are really, really good guys.
Oh, nice. That's really good. Yeah, awesome. They're very open, and they like people to build upon their platform, don't they? They like extend the platform.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that's the end of the news.
And now it's time for a gadget alert. We have some new gadgets to alert you about.
Do we need we need a new sting?
We need a jingle. We need some sort of siren going on there, I think.
Right.
A
we'll Creative
Commons
siren. Yes.
So first of all, the BBC has announced a plan to give away free programmable hardware to every Year 7 schoolchild in the UK, totaling 1 million devices.
Are they a million iPads that they're going to give away?
Oh, not quite. I said programmable hardware.
Well.
The device is nicknamed the Microbit. I guess that's a reference to the old BBC Micro. It features 2 buttons and a 5x5 LED matrix, and I think it's a micro USB connection for power and programming. And then it can interface with other devices such as the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi.
It's interesting that they're shipping out to school children a device, that isn't an Arduino and that isn't a Raspberry Pi, the two things that are, quite popular with, early learning of computer programming, but something that interfaces to both of those. So it still builds upon the success of the Arduino platform and the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a far more basic and therefore probably a lot cheaper device. I don't think this is a £35 piece of kit. I think this is more of a sort of couple of pound piece of kit. It really is like a little sort of badge size thing with, some LEDs on in a grid. It means people are saying it's an LED display. It's not really a display. It's, 25 LEDs. In rows basically, and then it's got two buttons, and I think you can connect other things to it as well, but as it is, it's it's a fairly basic piece of kit, and I think it can be then connected to any standard PC for programming, including Raspberry Pis.
From what you've just described, it sounds like it's not going to run Elite.
No, I don't think it's going to run like a full OS. I think it's more of an Arduino type microcontroller kind of deal rather than like an actual computer, but it's still something which the children are going to have to play with and keep and program, and it's been described as wearable because it's that sort of size, so you could program it to, I don't know, flash you the letters of your name and attach it to your school uniform or something, or whatever it is kids do these days.
So what was the first computer you had at school, Martin?
At my school, the actual school computers. Yeah. Oh my goodness!
What were you exposed to at school?
You know what? I can't even remember what they were. We did have at one of the schools when I got to secondary school. I think a lot of secondary schools had these in the UK. We had one BBC Micro with a Laserdisc player.
Oh,
with
wow. Did you have the Doomsday disc?
The Doomsday disc, yeah.
I talk about this like I was at school at the time, but
yeah,
no,
that was the only proper computer I ever experienced at my schools until I got to do A levels, and then when I got to my A level school, we had RM Nimbus computers that ran a sort of almost compatible sort of DOS based platform, and that was my first exposure to like real computers at school.
So,
but they were substandard compared to what I was using at home.
So I remember at secondary school, I remember when we got BBC Micros, and I remember everyone crowding around them. They were in the library, and people would fight to go in and use them. And then later PCs like Amstrads and, like you say, RM Nimbus. But at the time, there was we had nothing. I mean, at home I might have had a Sinclair Spectrum, and other people in my class would have had a Commodore 64 or something. But we didn't have anything super powerful at home that matched what we had at school. So the school thing was like, you'd queue up to use it, and you'd go in to the library to use it. Whereas these days, kids have access, many kids have access to quite, probably more than one computing device in their home. Their parents might have a laptop that they let them use, or the kids might be able to use a cheap Android tablet or an iPad or a parent's iPhone or something like that. So I don't know, the novelty of this seems like it would be less than it was for us like 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, this sounds like a device that's on par with the VIC-20, my first computer. This has probably got more RAM than my VIC-20, which had 3.5K of RAM at the time. But, it isn't very exciting, is it? When you consider that you have got the Raspberry Pi, even if you take the very first Raspberry Pi, the 256 meg version, you can do an awful lot more with that than you can with something with a 5x5 LED matrix.
Right. But people can be quite inventive. It'll be interesting to see
how they...
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. Let's hope it sparks some real innovation and imagination, and maybe we'll see something really cool come out of this.
Yeah.
Those of us with children will doubtless find out about it via Facebook.
It'll be interesting to see as well if whoever's manufacturing these is going to just be selling them generally as well as the BBC giving them away.
I realised actually the year 7, my daughter goes into year 7 next year. So, in theory, she potentially could be one of the kids who, is exposed to this device. So, I'll be stealing.
So we can expect a review from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't take it off and try and make it run Ubuntu.
Yeah, moving on. What else in this gadget alert?
Yeah. alert. Google have announced a new model of their high-end Chromebook, the Pixel, which is it's a 13-inch laptop, which is running Chrome OS. It's got a high-resolution touchscreen display and around 12 hours of battery life, apparently. And this was 12 hours according to the reviewer, not according to Google.
Wow.
Yeah. Alan, you'll be very pleased to hear that it'll be one of the first devices with a USB Type-C connector.
Praise the Lord. I've mentioned my hatred of both, every flavor of USB connector. They all suck in varying degrees. As someone who has half a dozen phones on my desk, most of which have a micro USB connector on, I've broken the connector on a couple of them, and trying
to put it in the wrong way up.
Well, because they don't survive that many insertion removal cycles. They're not particularly robust. They're quite flimsy, and after a while, it gets to the point where it doesn't charge unless you hold it in a particular way. And I know. So I'm looking forward to this new connector that will go in either way up, so you don't have to wiggle it around and potentially break it by putting it in the wrong way. I like the idea that it has two of them, one on each side, so you could charge from either side of the device depending upon which part of the desk the power cable comes up.
Yeah.
But it's a Chromebook. It's not, in inverted commas, a proper laptop.
Yeah. Which is interesting. I mean, because it's a sort of premium price point, and it's also fairly high spec, except for the storage. I mean, it's got, the base model comes with an i5 processor, 8 gig of RAM, and 32 gig of onboard storage because they give you a terabyte of Google Drive. And then they've got the upgraded LS model, which has an i7 processor and then double the RAM and storage on board. And its base model is $999. And then $300 extra for the improved model.
That's a lot of money, isn't it?
It's a lot of money for a system which is a web browser.
Yeah, and also, you say they're quite high spec, but with 8 gigs of RAM, by the time you've opened Google Plus, Google Mail, and YouTube with Chrome, all your 8 gigs of RAM has just been exhausted.
Yeah.
So
I realise you're being sarcastic.
Make a machine this fancy.
And exaggeration for fun, but you're not far off. Chrome does consume quite a lot of resources, and
it really does.
But then my laptop has 4 gig, and I can run my browser quite happily and do other stuff at the same time. I mean, surely it can't really be that intensive to run Chrome OS.
I think one of the problems is if you get to be the kind of person who lives in the browser, if your main activity is editing code, then you're going to have a text editor open. And you'll spend most of your time in a text editor and or development environment or whatever. But the tabs that I use the most are Google Docs, my email, and websites that deal with code. So Launchpad. So I might have large amounts of code open in Launchpad or JavaScript heavy pages or something like Google Docs with a big spreadsheet open. Mm-hmm. Part of me thinks I should be disciplined and kill off some of those tabs and not leave them all open all the time. But I kind of wish I didn't have to do that. I would like to just leave, they're just web pages. Why can't I just leave them open? I feel like I realize these are big fat web pages.
It's like having LibreOffice and Skype and Eclipse and whatever else open all at once. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've seen people talk about the Chromebook and, wipe it and put, real Linux distro on there. But then you could get so much more, maybe not it feels like this is like trying to be the Apple Mac of Chromebooks, the high end one that's got all the design, that's, beautiful, but still it's just a Chromebook. And I also feel I obviously I dislike Chromebooks from the fact that it, especially in education, because it teaches people that putting all their data in the cloud is a good thing, and putting your data on somebody else's computer is a good thing. And the fact that this thing has a terabyte of Google Drive storage, if you are a 10-year-old, 12-year-old kid, and you're given a Chromebook, not necessarily a Pixel, but any kind of Chromebook, and you're given a deal that puts all your data in the cloud. Yes, I know you can get your data out of the Google Cloud, but once you push it in there, it's hard to get it out again, as in, it's quite sticky.
It's a lot of data.
Yeah, it's a lot of data, and you've got to find alternatives to all these features that you've locked yourself into. And I think doing it at school perpetuates this idea that you should put your data on somebody else's computer, and we've all seen what that results in, So I'm reluctant. I don't like Chrome OS for that reason. And an expensive laptop doesn't, an expensive pretty laptop with a long battery life doesn't change that at all.
Great. Well, that's all for this week's Gadget Alert.
We don't have a Sting. We should get one.
Yeah. Oh, do we not have a Sting to play now either?
Oh, all right then. Samantha, go.
Well, that's all for episode 3. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back next week where we'll be discussing Ubuntu Mate, and we'll bring you some gooey love.
Thank you for joining us, Martin.
I promise.
You're most welcome. Thanks.
I hope you'll stick around for next week.
I will.
Excellent.
Yes. So, people may have noticed we recorded a day late because we try and record on Tuesday. Maybe we'll explain what happened next time. So listen next time to find out why we recorded a day late and why Laura's not here. I think that's it. We'll see you next time.
Yep. All right then. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
And stop recording.